Good morning, sunshine. It's Noel Powell from creationeffects.com, and I am heating things up with a new effect. It's called Solaris, and it's an After Effects template that lets you easily create custom sun animations. The template includes 12 finished sun animations, which you're seeing right now, or you can quickly and easily build your own custom sun, which I'm going to show you how to do in this tutorial. Now, personally, I was always afraid of the sun because I'm a ginger and I burn easily. And to make matters worse, I'm short, so the kids used to call me the Red Dwarf. Anyway, things are different now. I put all that behind me, and now look at me. I'm a big star, making my own suns and helping others make suns. And the sun that you make will be high-res and 3D, so you can create 3D scenes from it and animate your camera to fly over it or orbit around or whatever. And you can see from these presets, the effects look real. And that's because it uses elements made from real sun footage obtained from NASA. So it includes a bunch of authentic surface textures and prominences and coronal mass ejections. And it includes a bunch of other effects as well, such as lens flares, heat haze, sound effects, star backgrounds, and some heat-themed title effects. And as a bonus, I'm also including some very high-quality sun jokes. Now I know that after my critter collection tutorials, a couple hundred of you politely begged me to never do puns again in my videos, so I stopped for a long time. But what can I say? I'm a funny guy, and this is what we funny people do. We tell totally blazing jokes, and I've just got a flair for it. Also, sun puns rhymes, so you know. All right, let's get started. We're burning daylight here. When you download the zip file, if you're on a Windows computer, you'll want to right-click it and choose the Extract All option, and that should help prevent some errors in After Effects. If you're on a Mac, you can just double-click it, and that creates a new folder with the Solaris.aep file, and just open that up in After Effects 2020 or later. And then in After Effects, you'll be greeted with some instructions here, and if we look in our project panel, you see the presets folder here, with the comps for all 12 sun animations that you saw in the demo video. I'm going to focus on how to build your own sun, because once you understand that, you'll know how to customize these presets. So I split this up into 3 steps, so let's go through them. Step 1 is choosing a surface texture. So we'll just open this sun surface comp here, and there's a lot of options in here. You can unhide any layer to use it as your surface texture. I'm going to hide these adjustment layers for now. And these yellow layers at the bottom are made from authentic sun footage. These are 8K clips, sections of the sun's surface, seamlessly stitched together. You can play these and you'll see the texture moving and plasma filaments coming out and all that good stuff. Then these orange layers are some alternate textures that are made in After Effects. The advantage of these is you can customize them using slider controls inside the Effect Controls panel here. So you can see in this panel all these controls for adjusting the look or speed of the solar flares. So we'll just call this the solar panel. And then on the top we have these red layers. These are also made in After Effects, and they have customization controls, but these are intended to be overlaid on top of whatever texture you've chosen down here. So I'll solo a few of these. They're just squiggles or spots, and you can see they each use a blending mode, and blending modes will play an important part in your animation, so let me shine some light on the subject here. You can change the blending modes of any texture or prominence to get different looks, and actually you can even combine textures to create something totally new. Like, I'll unhide a couple textures, and we'll call this guy Adam Johnson, and we'll say this guy is Adam Jordan. And I can change the blending mode of the top one, and see, it's like a fusion of the atoms. And here's a useful tip. Hold down the Shift key, and then keep typing the plus key, and that will cycle through the blending modes. And then up here we have 3 adjustment layers. The second and third ones are on by default, and you can see how that warps the top and bottom, because when a rectangular texture gets wrapped around a sphere, it causes some anus problems on our sun. Yeah, you heard me. If we go to our sun comp, you can see we got an anus problem, and you don't want to put a prominence on that. I mean, you don't want to stick it where the sun don't shine. So we'll keep those 2 adjustment layers on to remove that. And then also, if we look at the back of the sun, and we see this vertical seam, and if we go back, this first adjustment layer will remove that seam. This is optional, and you should just leave it off unless you actually need to see the back of your sun. All right, let's turn up the heat. On to step 2. This is the fun part, adding prominences. I'll preview one of these clips in the footage folder. So I've cleaned up all of this footage, and I've made them fade out around the edges. This is called a prominence, and I was certain that this was called a solar flare, but turns out I'm not that bright, and solar flares are just the bright flashes of light. And these strands of plasma sticking out are called prominences, and when they're really big, erupting out of the sun's atmosphere, they're called coronal mass ejections, or CMEs. They can eject 1 billion tons of plasma out toward Earth, which is more terrifying to me than that time I watched The Shining. All of those elements are included here, and you can get them from this comp, prominences, flares, and CMEs. You can unhide any of these and preview them, and when you find one you want to use, you just copy and paste it to your sun comp, and then parent it to your sun control layer. Before I do that, let's take a look at our options in this comp. We've got 25 video clips, CMEs and prominences, and then we have this prominence ring that circles the entire sun. This one can be useful. And note that all of these have their duration in seconds in their name. The shortest is 9 seconds, and the longest is 3 minutes. So you'll know how long one loop lasts. These will all loop continuously and seamlessly, and they're mesmerizing and beautiful, so you can grab a bottle of Corona in front of your plasma TV and just watch these all day if you want. And I also wanted to point out that all of these use the add blending mode, but you can experiment with this to get different looks. Like some other good ones are screen, give it some sunscreen, or linear burn, give it a sunburn, or maybe pin light, give it sunlight. And you guys are already wanting to beat the living daylights out of me, but I'm just getting warmed up. So if you can't take the heat, get out of the sunroom. Further down, we have some prominences made in After Effects, and these are helpful if you want a specific look because you can customize them with the controls. You can make rings around your sun with these, and you can adjust the height or width or speed. You have a couple more options for prominences that go all the way around your sun here, 360 degrees. And then this one, the CC cylinder one, is the only prominence that is actually 3-dimensional and not just flat. So this is how you can make loops of plasma shooting out of the surface. You can put it anywhere on your sun, and I recommend whenever you use it, you duplicate it at least once, and the duplicate will be slightly different, so it will add some variation and depth to it. You'll probably want to read through the instructions for this one. All of these layers have some instructions in the comments column here, so you can make this column really wide so that you can read them. And then this last prominence layer down here, I'll solo it. This creates some 3D rays radiating out of the brightest areas of your sun. All right, so let's put a couple of these on our sun. I'll just select one CME and one prominence and copy those layers. Now I'll open the Your Sun comp here, and you can choose the HD or 4K one. I'll go with HD. All right, so I'll paste those prominences. I want to keep my sun control layer at the top and keep my 3D layers together. So I'll move those down here above the sun glow layer. And they're going to be in the wrong position until you parent them to the sun control layer. So don't forget this. Every time you paste a layer into here, just pick whip the layer to the sun control layer like this. There, so now this control layer is the parent, which I guess makes this the sun. Now by default, all prominences appear here, 45 degrees from the top, but we can move it anywhere we want using the layer's controls. And when the layer was in the other comp, everything was neat and tidy, and when you copy the effect, After Effects is kind enough to expand every single effect for you. So now we got a hot mess here, and it drives me crazy, and I always close everything except for the controls here at the top. I think I'll scale this up nice and big so we can see it. And then I can use these first two controls to position it anywhere we want on the surface of the sun. Now, these will look best around the outer edge. You probably don't want to position it like right here, right under the camera, because it'll just look like a line, which is not ideal. But look on the bright side. Here would be an excellent opportunity to use one of those 3D loops from the CC cylinder prominence that we looked at. Or you can also offset the angle of these if you want to get more of a side view of a layer. Now, under the scale controls, we have this height distance from sun control. And depending on your scene, you might need to adjust this. For wide angles, this default setting should be fine. But watch what happens when I move my camera way in. I'll hit the C key shortcut to bring up my camera dolly tool and click and drag. So our prominence actually lifts further off the surface the closer that we get to the sun. So we can adjust this to put it back on the surface. And what helps is if you use the camera orbit tool and then orbit the camera around until it's level with the surface of the sun, right where that prominence is. And then you can see if the prominence is flush with the surface or not. And you don't have to do this for each prominence. There's actually a control to adjust the height of all the prominences at once on the sun control layer, which we're getting to that. And next we have these scale controls, so I could scale it up like this. But now you're looking at this and saying, wait a minute, this curve doesn't conform to the curve of the sun's surface anymore. Well, Sunny, you should say that, because our next control lets us do just that. We can adjust the arc or the curve amount if needed to make it fit. Next we have some tint controls. I've kept all of the prominences at their original colors, but you can change that if you want. Flare speed, if the prominence is kind of slow and you want to see more movement, you can turn this up. And with this offset time control, you can make the layer start playing from a certain time, since some moments of the clip might be more interesting than other moments. All right, let's look at the sun control layer now. This is where we'll find all of our main sun settings, or for short, we'll just call them our sun sets. First, these sun transform controls, we can set the size and position of the sun, but 2000 pixel radius is basically full res, so I would just leave these controls and just move your camera instead if you want to change the view. The sun rotation speed will make the sun automatically rotate on its axis, or you can manually rotate it with these. Something to remember: when the sun rotates, the prominences rotate with it, which is good, but this sun glow layer, I'll solo that so you can see it. This does not rotate with the sun. It will actually always face directly at the camera, so that no matter where you put your camera, the sun will always have a glow around the outer edge. What that means though, when the sun is spinning, some prominences might move right through this sun glow layer, and it can create some distracting lines where the layers intersect. So if you want, you could always turn off the auto orientation of the sun glow layer by right-clicking it and choose transform, then auto orient, and set it to off. Next we have the prominence controls. So I already showed you each prominence has its own controls on each layer. So those are the local controls. And then these affect all the prominences together, so they're called the global controls. So like you can increase the brightness, make it warmer. So it's a global warming control. Then we have the sun glow controls. We looked at the sun glow layer earlier. There's an outer glow and an inner glow, and you can customize them independently. So for example, in here we can type FFFF00 in for a yellow light, and here we can type FF0000 in for a red light. And you can see here the glow is made with multiple circle effects. So 3 for the outer glow and 3 for the inner glow, and that gives us an exponential glow. So instead of a linear gradient, it's much brighter right at the edge of the sun, And the fall off is steep at first, but it gets slower and slower the further out it gets. And last, we have these sun edge controls, which use the roughen edges effect to do just that. It makes the outer edge rougher so that it's not so straight. And you can use the controls to add a glow around the sun before the roughen edges effect is applied. And that actually creates these mini prominences, and they change shape, and you can adjust their speed and color and all that. So that's everything for step 2. You could animate your camera at this point and render out your animation if you wanted. Or if you want to give it something extra, you can check out what's inside the step 3 folder, which has all the extra bells and whistles to make your animation really shine. I'll go through these real quick, starting at the bottom. In this title effects comp, there are 10 custom animated titles that you can use in your animation. They're all kind of heat or energy themed. These come from the Creation Title Effects template, which has 200 custom title effects covering lots of themes, effects, styles, genres, everything under the sun. So if you like these, you can check out that template from Creation Effects. These are all just text layers, so you can use your text tool to edit the text, and you can change the font to whatever you want. And then each of them have a ton of customization options using their controls. Now you could copy and paste these, but what I would recommend is you edit the title in this comp and keep it nice and big so that it fills the comp, and then just drag this entire title effects comp into your sun comp. And you can make it 3D if you want, and then scale it down or put it wherever you want in your scene. If it's not pre-composed like this, you'll run into issues when you try to animate the text scale or position or other transform properties. And you can read more about that in the instructions up here. Okay, also we have a few star background images in this folder. You can drop those into your sun comp if you want a quick background. And this folder has some public domain sound effects. This template is all about the visuals at its core. So I wasn't going to even have these, but I grabbed a few public domain sound effects from pixabay.com to use in the demo video, and then I had the bright idea to just include them in the template. So you're clear to use these in your commercial or non-commercial animations. And then we have the overlay effects comp in both 4K and HD. So open the one for whichever resolution you're working in. Let me hide this instructions layer here. So we got some good stuff in here. You can unhide any of these and preview it on the sun image that's in here. Just read the layer comments for the instructions on how to use the effect. I should note that a couple of these actually use 2 layers. So the displacement specs effect and the heat haze effect, both of these use a map layer, which is right underneath them. And you'll need to copy both layers into your comp. So I'll select both heat haze layers here, then copy and paste them to my sun. And then, trust me, in the heat of the moment, you're going to forget this second step and you'll wonder why it doesn't work. So burn this into your memory. You need to reset the references to that map layer. So on this top layer, the adjustment layer, you'll have to open both the camera lens blur effect and the displacement map effect and set the map layer to the heat haze map layer. And then you can control the intensity of the heat haze with these controls. And if you want to adjust the size, detail, and speed of the heat haze, you'll do that on the map layer. And normally this map layer should remain off. We don't want to see it unless we're customizing it, and then we can turn it on and use these controls to edit the texture, which is what drives the heat haze. This whole heat haze effect is actually a free download on the freebies page at creationeffects.com. It's an animation preset, so you can install it and always access it in After Effects. It has its own video and everything if you want to learn more about that effect. But let's go back to our overlay effects. There's this grain and particles effect if you want a dirtier, more realistic, less computer-generated look. And then down here, we have some very useful custom lens flares. So with these, you can use the controls to position them anywhere you want, like on the brightest part of your sun. And you can play with these controls to adjust the brightness and get different looks. And if you want even more control, you can double click these layers and it opens up the pre-comps. And you can start to see the complexity of these effects. Every element of the lens flare is a separate layer, each with dozens of customization controls of their own. So the amount of control you get is astronomical. These 6 lens flares are just some of the 50 lens flares from the Creation Lens Flares template, which is another totally free download from Creation Effects. It's the most downloaded item on the site, and you should go get it now because it's free. And who doesn't like lens flares? They're super useful. All right, the sun is setting on our time together, sadly, but real quick, we can take a peek at the presets. These presets should make more sense to you now. You can open any folder, and in the precomps folder, there's a sun surface precomp, where you can choose a different surface texture for that preset if you want. And there's a 4K and HD version of each preset. And inside, most of these have some kind of keyframed camera motion, and there will be prominences and the sun control layer if you want to adjust the sun. So some of these are pretty cool. Like this one, I just added this one adjustment layer with some color correction over the whole thing to make it all purple, or maybe kind of violet. It's actually like really violet, like extra or ultraviolet. And here's another one where I did an eclipse. I just put on this circle shape to block the sun. See how I put on that sun block? All right, I think tempers are flaring at this point from the jokes, so I'll just show you one more preset. I called it Solar Landscape. This one's unique because there's no control layer and no sphere in it. I just brought in the sun surface pre-comp and laid it flat. And then I just dragged the flare clips in here one by one directly from the footage folder, and then moved them to different spots. And then this adjustment layer adds a curve to the whole thing. And I used different blending modes on these, but if you wanted, you could select a bunch of these prominences and just cycle through the blending modes to experiment with different looks. And that should do it for this Solaris tutorial. Now, before I go out in a blaze of glory, here are some other great templates you can look into. Obviously, there's the Space Effects collection, which I did years ago, and it's still a hot item today. And the burning question on some people's minds will be, is Solaris part of that package? Because that one has all the planets and a solar system, and it also includes a custom sun. But as you can see, it's a sad sun. I probably told you it was great when I made it, but turns out I was blowing solar wind up your skirt, and that sun was not so hot after all. But this one is, I promise. I'm not gaslighting you. So anyway, my burning desire is to give the Space Effects collection a big update soon, so I'll probably include this sun in that package, but when I'll do that is written in the stars somewhere, but I can't tell you exactly when. Another good template with some sun effects is Landscaper. This is my favorite template on the site, and it lets you create custom 3D landscape animations in After Effects. And you can build your scene with a library of 1,000 elements, and create anything from deserts to jungles to beaches to winter landscapes. And it's got this automatic sky feature, so you can set the time of day or animate time lapses. It's a lot of fun, so you can check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. Another one kind of related to this is Aurora Effect, which makes custom auroras for your videos. If you have $19 burning a hole in your pocket, that's all it costs. That's it for me. I'll be riding off into the sunset now, and I'm taking my jokes with me. So enjoy the template, subscribe to see all the new free products and After Effects tutorials and new templates that are released. And I'll see you at the next tutorial.